Welcome back to the Pass Back Podcast. I'm your host, Jackson Moss, alongside
Cade Young.
Cade. We got some stuff to talk about this week, man. I think there's a lot of disappointment, is the word, all across College Station and the rest of the A&M fan base. But man,
I,
I was at that game on Saturday, and it was rough, dude. I mean, people were leaving probably by beginning of the fourth quarter, mid fourth quarter, which was really shocking, especially for A&M. But were you at that game?
yeah, I was. It was not necessarily something I want to talk about, but 12th man
Yeah.
did show up huge. So shout out to 12th man.
That's right. No, yeah, I mean, you can't discredit, although people were leaving, during the middle of the fourth quarter, you can't discredit the false starts. I can't remember. I think it was like 8 false starts, something like that, something
It was
ridiculous in the fourth quarter.
ridiculous.
I mean, it was probably the loudest I've heard Kyle Field in a long time. But hopping into our first segment. So I know last week we talked about who was going to be our player of the week for the Alabama game and who needed to show up, and it was going to be Edgerrin Cooper. And lo and behold, Edgerrin Cooper shows up this week. I mean,
Yeah.
talk about the Pass Back podcast calling it.
Yep.
45 was a huge problem for Alabama this past week. He's you can tell he's getting more mature. He's getting more confident in himself, and he's just blowing up the hole. And I was wondering, do you think we made the right choice with Edgerrin Cooper being our player of the week?
I mean, he only had 11 tackles and 3 sacks. I mean,
Yeah, yeah, some light.
we probably could have picked like Walter Nolan or something, but no, yeah, Edgerrin
Yeah,
Cooper, he showed up and he would be talked about more if A&M had won the game. But and another
yeah.
surprise was Bryce Anderson.
Yeah, I mean Bryce Anderson had that pick, kind of gave us a little bit of momentum, and I saw a lot of similarities, because we got the pick, and we come out in I think it was the third quarter or the fourth quarter, and then we throw a pick right back to him. That's exactly how it
Yeah,
went in 2021 when Calzado was quarterback. We had so much momentum going for a little bit there, and then
yeah.
Calzado comes out and throws that pick and gives it right back to him. So it was kind of funny to me, and no, I think Bryce Anderson is also equally right there trending with Edgerrin Cooper. Bryce is a little bit younger, and he's coming into his role a little bit sooner than Edgerrin did in his career, which is fine. But I mean, right now we
Hmm.
need him more than ever. So, but yeah, no, I think recapping the last game, there was a few major problems that I noticed, and we kind of talked about them. And I was looking back through our notes from last week, and it's
Yeah.
almost like we called those too. And
Oh,
it was
absolutely.
offensive line. Offensive line on our side was just, I mean, it was fine the first half, but abysmal the second half. I mean, it was a complete flip. And I don't know what happened. I don't know what was said in the locker room. I guess we'll find out this week on the Pulse, but
Yeah.
I need to hear that halftime speech because I don't know what he was saying to them, but whatever he said, he needs to not say it for the rest of the season.
A&M may have not won the game, but I've never seen Saban that mad, man. That was
Yeah.
exciting.
Yeah. No,
I've also
it was
never
like
seen
old Nick
Bama
Saban.
get, yeah, 14 penalties against Bama is nuts. I've never seen
You know what's even more nuts is that we're losing that game.
it.
That's even crazier.
We won
I
the
mean,
turnover
but
battle too.
yeah, no, and that's what something everyone thought we were going to have a problem with, especially with Max being a quarterback. Everyone thought we were going to be turning the ball over more, which he'd had a few. But yeah, no, I mean, it's hard to look back at all the things that went our way in that game and to say, man, how did we not lose it? Because if you're looking at it on paper and you don't know the outcome of the game, you're saying this team's winning. This team's beating. I
Yeah.
mean, Jalen Milrow, for example, he had negative 31 rushing yards. I mean, no team in the nation or no team on their schedule is going to hold them to that or hold Jalen Milrow to that, other than maybe Georgia if they go on to play him in the SEC championship, which is looking more and more
Right.
likely. But we'll get kind of
Yeah.
into that later on in the show, what's going on in the SEC and what this means for us now. But yeah, man, I mean, I think I kind of was right when I said it's a little bit disappointing. That was like the word I think everyone was looking for. We had it that first half, but what were some takeaways from the game that you saw that we could have done better on?
I think that I don't know if it's Petrino's play calling, but I've noticed a trend all year where like they even said like during the game that like A&M scores on like the first two possessions pretty much every game until I think this game. But they scored twice real quick. They didn't score touchdowns, but it was two field goals real quick. They I feel like they rely too heavily on the script to start the game. And I think if he could incorporate those plays that are huge at the beginning throughout the game more, the O line wouldn't be as big of a problem because Jimbo schemed around our defense and Jermaine Burton went off. So I think coaching was the most important reason why we lost.
Yeah, I know, and it crushes me because I just see guys like Walter Nolan that are really passionate about it. I don't know if you saw, but after the game, he was crying and just bawling his eyes out because he wanted to win that game that was important to him. But
Yeah,
I mean, you talk about missed opportunities, man. I mean, what we can't do is for whatever reason, I don't know. I'm speaking now because I'm kind of fired up for the not just the average A&M fan today, but the A&M fan who's been watching for the past 10 years. And I think they'll all agree with me when I say this. We cannot play two halves of football. For whatever reason, no one knows why. We can
no,
either start strong and finish weak or start weak and finish strong. And it's never easy to just sit back and enjoy a game and just be in complete control. I mean, honestly, I couldn't tell you what the last game was. And I mean, not counting obviously cupcake games like in the beginning of the season, I couldn't tell you where we've been in control of a game for the whole, four quarters. And it's sad because I mean, you got to start asking questions. Is it coaching? Yeah, I saw a stat the other day, and this is a tweet from someone on Twitter, and it said I think Kevin Sumlin and Jimbo, the differences between them in their first 66 games was like Kevin Sumlin was like 43 and 13, and Jimbo's 43 and 10. They both have no SEC titles. They will both only have three bowl game wins, and you start asking these questions, and I don't want to be one of those people that we lose to Bama and we want to fire Jimbo Fisher. I don't think that's the answer. I think if you're thinking that, you're the average football fan, but you're not someone who understands how building up a program works. I think
right.
he's done a lot of great things. I think recruiting's been great. However, you do it when you start having the same stat line as the previous coach that we fired, and we're paying you, a lot more money. People will start to ask questions. And I think one of those big questions is not necessarily Jimbo. I think it's actually our offensive line coach. And I'm
Oh
not
yeah,
saying we should fire anyone once again, but we should definitely look into our options and at least see what's going on over there because I mean I feel like we didn't let up that many sacks at the beginning of the year. And against Bama, I don't remember how many we had, but that fourth quarter was a bloodbath for us.
yeah. I mean, we sacked them 6 times. Just Bama sacked A&M 5 times. It was pretty even. Third down and run defense was the same. Like our third down and defense and run defense were really good, but so was Bama's. So like there wasn't really an edge there. Obviously, like
That's
we
right.
talked about, the penalties and turnovers were huge, but like you were saying, like it's not we can't say Jimbo should be fired because of him recruiting like the number one class of all time, and then now like we have the third or fourth for 2024. It's just hard to see like him have the same results as like you said, Kevin Sumlin. But
Yeah.
I don't know.
It just
Yeah, I mean,
it gets to that point where it's like you start what is the like the time where you can start asking that question now, like when do we move on? What do you think if it, like what's going to be the final pushing us over the edge where we need to start looking at a new head coach?
I feel like it will be a mutual decision. Like I don't think he'll be gone after this year with the way recruiting is going right now, but I think he will want to leave because I don't like you've seen like friends of yours like take pictures with Jimbo, right? Like I have not seen him happy at all this year. Not on the sideline, not with
Yeah,
other people. I think he knows that he's on the hot seat right now and he's
yeah,
not really doing much to prove otherwise with 2 losses already halfway through the season.
yeah. And I will say starting out as hot as he did in SEC play was probably something that was going to keep him around a little bit longer. He had to though. He was backed into a corner. He absolutely had to come out and win a few
Yeah,
games in SEC play.
yeah.
And no, I think he could be the guy. But what my big thing that I'm starting to realize about Jimbo is a lot of people had a lot of faith in just Jimbo. And Jimbo's going to do it all. Jimbo's going to call plays. He's going to run the defense. And I think what you're going to have to do, and what we're kind of seeing with Bobby Petrino, is Jimbo has to have people around him that are equally as good at coaching as him.
Yeah,
When you bring in guys like Bobby Petrino and that have a big influence on the offense, now our offense is it's finding its identity. It's getting a little bit better, but it's still not elite offense or top tier offense. However, but you can see it moving in the right direction.
yeah,
Now, if you bring in a guy, which I mean, I really miss Mike Elko, and I still believe in Durkin, especially with how he's adjusting this year. He's actually impressing me a lot. I wasn't big on him at all, but with how he's moving into the 4-3 and the 3-4, we kind of talked about it last week a little bit. He's moving stuff around. We're actually getting pressure on teams like Alabama, and I think it's making a big difference. And when you start putting those guys all together, I mean, that's all it takes. That's why Nick Saban, all of the people that used to work for him, all of his assistant coaches are now head coaches somewhere, like almost all of them. You got Lane
right.
Kiffin, Kirby Smart, I mean, even Jimbo Fisher. So I think it's going to be big for him. I'm very interested and I'm kind of excited to see who we get in the offseason and who we decide to hire. But I mean, if you think that changes can be made after this, yeah, I mean, you're crazy. I don't know what's going to happen
Yeah,
if Jimbo decides to try to hold on to some of these pieces that he has right now.
yeah, I agree.
But
I think, I mean, obviously, Mike Elko is a better coach than Durkin. Durkin
yeah,
did a good job with what he was presented, like 26 points allowed against Bama. I mean, their offense hasn't looked good all year, but like they knew that the weak point was the pass game down the field against A&M,
right,
and
right.
they exposed it. But he, it's kind of a necessary evil because he had to have a quarterback spy. So like that was one guy that just kind of had to sit there and not do anything. But
Yeah,
against like Miami, we shouldn't have given up 48 because Tyler Van
absolutely,
Dyke was not a mobile quarterback. But it
absolutely.
made sense against Bama. Our offense just had to step up there. You can't give 7 touches combined for Anias and Evan Stewart. Like two of the best receivers in the nation need to have more touches than that.
Absolutely. I think everyone would agree with that too. But kind of to touch on this last, we were talking about missed opportunities in this game. Before we move on to our next segment, I really want to talk about a few big moments in the game that I think a lot of A&M fans had questions about. One of them being the biggest one. Do we go for that touchdown with 2 minutes left in the game, or do we just kick that field goal if you're the head coach?
I mean, you kind of have to kick the field goal as the coach. I mean, you can't. You got to take what you're given, and after the momentum swayed the other way, you kind of just have to take
Yeah,
the points and hope to get the onside. But I mean, no fan's gonna be happy with the way that ended. So I don't
yeah. I
blame him for
mean,
that part though.
look, when you're put in that position as a head coach, in the stands, every single person around me was freaking out when we were kicking the field goal. And I
Yeah.
was trying to calm everyone down. I was like, hold on. This is kind of smart. This is kind of smart. We're going to get the ball back if we can get a stop. We still, I think, had 3 timeouts on the board at the time. I was like, this is
Hmm.
kind of smart. We just need to stop. Um, but when you think about it, if we go for that touchdown and we don't get it, people are still going to be upset. And that's like kind of the devil's advocate of being a head coach. Because then they're going
Yeah.
to be like, why didn't you just take the field goal, kick it back off, and then, do exactly what he did? So it's like, it's kind of hard. The only thing I will say that kind of gives them a little bit of an edge in the argument is say we do turn the ball over, we don't get the touchdown or whatever, it's just turnover on downs. They are punting from, their I think it was 17 to 26, and if we get a stop right there, they're punting from pretty much their end zone.
Hmm.
And I don't it still would have been, like whatever it was, 9 point game. So you needed the field goal at some point. So I don't really think the field goal was a bad idea at all. I could see why people are thinking, maybe he just punts it away from his end zone. But I mean, there's not many things you can do in that position. And a
No.
few things that would help is, scoring when we're in the red zone and scoring when we're supposed to score, not missing field goals and stuff like that. But you
Yeah.
got to wonder when you get into that position, it's so if we give ourselves the first touchdown of the drive when we first drove down and we got stopped, and we take 7 for that, that's gonna mean that that field goal that we kick puts us up 1. So it's just talk about missed opportunities. I just kind of want to circle back and just talk about how much we need to execute more in the red zone, and once we get downfield, how important it is to actually get the points that we're going to need. Because I mean, all of those opportunities that we had came back to bite us in the end. I mean, 20-26 is a one score game, and you just got to start thinking about those one scores.
Right. Especially with how many times they got to the red zone and just kicked a field goal. You're
Yeah,
right.
absolutely, absolutely. I mean, you just can't have it, especially not against an Alabama. And Alabama goes down and scores. Um, but moving on to let's do. I kind of still want to preview, or not preview yet. I kind of want to do a recap a little bit more of Alabama. I think people have been waiting for us to bring this up, but we kind of talked about it last week and actually called this one too. 28, Josh DeBerry.
He,
I mean,
I don't even know how to
dude,
feel.
that guy made Burton look like just a 5-star first round draft pick on Saturday. I
He did.
mean, I last week I talked a little bit about how I kind of liked Josh DeBerry. He comes up big sometimes, but he gets burnt.
Yeah.
There was no coming up big. He had a few good tackles. He stopped him a few times where we needed it. I think on a few screen plays, but it doesn't really make up for it whenever we're kind of getting absolutely rained on. I think it was 321 passing yards or something like that. Um, or it might have been like 300, but I know he had 190 or 197 pass yards alone. So we made him look like an absolute stud, and that's unfortunately also on Durkin because it's
Hmm.
it's poor coaching leaving him in there. You see a mismatch, you got to throw a new guy in there. Granted, Deuce Harmon was getting beat a little bit too, but I mean, all right, I think we're back. We had a little bit of a minor technical difficulty, but I think the last thing I was talking about was Josh DeBerry. Filling in that spot for him with Deuce Harmon was kind of rough, but as like I was saying, as much as it was on Josh DeBerry and he got burnt a lot by Burton and made him look unbelievable. Actually, what was funny about that is I had an Alabama fan talking to me, and he told me that word for word. He was like, "You made Burton today look like a first round draft pick," and I was like, "Thanks, man. I know. I watched the game." But no, I think it was rough, but it was also a little bit on Durkin for leaving him in there as long as he could. I think honestly, which I mean, I don't. I was gonna say you could put Chappelle over there on Burton and just see how he does, but I'm not putting Damani over there. So
No.
you're like you kind of run out of options. So I mean, I saw Chappelle though; he did get put on Burton once, and ironically, that was that one touchdown where Burton comes across and Chappelle tries to swat at it, and he just doesn't make contact with the ball, and it ends up being a touchdown. But yeah, so I think Josh DeBerry, I mean, this all comes down to recruiting, though. It really does because I couldn't tell you the last time we had an amazing corner come in. Like, I mean,
No.
granted, Josh Berry, he was pretty good in the transfer portal. He's a graduate right now, so I mean, this is gonna be the only year we have him, anyways. But
Yeah.
I mean, I'm talking like recruiting like a 5-star, like just awesome cornerback. It was supposed to be Denver Harris, and now Denver Harris is on one of the worst teams and or one of the worst defensive teams in the nation, ironically. But
Yeah.
we had all those guys in that number one class, and it's just not one of them could be one of our guy on defense. Like I miss having guys like Armani Watts and Deshaun or not Deshaun, Donovan Wilson, like in our secondaries. And I know Deshaun or Donovan kind of played up a little bit more, but I mean
Yeah.
we got to figure something out for the secondary.
It is exciting that we got the number one athlete recruit
Yeah,
because
yeah.
he's not quite what's his name for the Buffaloes. He's not
Oh
quite
gosh.
Hunter, Travis Hunter,
Yeah, yeah,
but he's gonna be a similar type where he can play both sides. So that'll
yeah.
be
Absolutely.
interesting to see.
Yeah, I'm excited
Um,
about that as well.
yeah, DeBerry, there was one drive, man, where I saw him make like two good plays in a row, and then the third down conversion was against him. And then the next time he had a tackle for a screen, and it was like third and long again, and another. What's crazy about that is like I checked before this game, and or Bama had a different leading receiver every single game before A&M, and they never got over 70 yards. And I like I knew that Burton was that good, not that good, but I knew he was good. And then I saw that and I was like, wow, well,
I mean, but still, props to Jalen Milroe for being a rushing quarterback. I think everyone can confidently say he's a very rush heavy quarterback and
right,
coming out and passing against us for, as much as he did. I
yeah,
mean, being able to adapt like that is going to make him one of the best quarterbacks in the SEC and possibly the nation if you already don't think it is or he is. But being able to adapt to our offense and kind of hit us where we're hurting and we're weak is honestly, it's a very big props to him. But I think we kind of dragged this recap out a little bit long this time. So we're going to kind of speed through these next few segments that we got coming up here. So let's go ahead and jump into kind of previewing this game coming up. But let's do potential players of the week. So I think you were going to do defense, and I was going to do offense. I can
yeah.
go ahead and get mine out of the way. So for offense, I think coming up into the Tennessee game, it's going to be important to hit Evan Stewart a lot more than we did in Alabama.
Absolutely.
Um, I think that we didn't utilize him nearly as much, and I mean, granted, he didn't get open as much, but I think Evan Stewart on the offensive side is going to be someone we have to use. I'm not too sure on my knowledge on the Tennessee secondaries or their defense, but as important as offense is though for the players of the week, I think what we're looking at is going to be defensive players of the week. So who do you got for this one?
I think that my defensive player to watch this week is Josh DeBerry. After we were
Yeah,
talking about him, it's his consistency that we're really going to be watching to see because Joe Milton has a ridiculous cannon. Like I think we've all seen the clips of him like throwing 70, 80 yards, but he's also not very consistent like throwing accurately downfield yet. So it's kind of be consistency versus consistency, but I think it's DeBerry this week.
yeah, and I think we kind of skipped over our players of the week for last week as well. For last week, I had Jake Johnson. Jake Johnson he came up big in the Alabama game for third down conversions, and he obviously had that pass, to start us. I think it was the first touchdown of the game to that back left
Yeah.
corner. So I'll take Jake Johnson. I think it was like 4 for 49 or something like that, receiving yards, something small, but they were really significant catches. And then for defense, who did you have?
We picked Cooper, and I think it was Cooper. Like he led
Yeah,
the team in tackles and sacks,
yeah,
and three
absolutely.
sacks in the game is ridiculous. So
That's right.
we got that right in the nose.
Yeah, yeah. We kind of talked about that also earlier in the podcast. Okay, so as far as we kind of touched on the trending players of this week. So to win this game, what do you think we have to do as a team?
I think, I mean, it's the same thing every week. Like we have the weapons and we have the defense. They just need to play better defense down the field and block, especially run blocking, because A&M is a run first team. We only
Absolutely.
threw 25 times last week. Like we have to be able to run the ball, especially
Yeah.
Max Johnson. So I think it more than anything our O line because we need our offense to score more than 20 points to beat Tennessee.
Yeah, no, I'm happy you actually said that and you touched on that because what I'm so worried about now is that we've opened a can of worms and our offensive line was doing good in the beginning of the season, or like not good, but pretty decent. And I'm
Yeah,
scared that now they've lost a lot of faith in themselves and they don't trust themselves anymore. And what we've seen from the past, 3 or 4 years, if you're watching, the A&M play, like is a weak offensive line, and that's plagued us for the longest time. And to see them kind of come in, and they're better. Don't get me wrong, they're better than the past few years right now. But to see them come in and kind of, have a tough time with Bama, it just makes me feel like we're going to fall right back into where we were. And what's going to be big this week is those guys not getting down on themselves and coming out and saying, you know, it's a new game. It's Tennessee. You know, it's obviously not Bama, but they're not anyone to look past. And we just need to pad up and go out there like it's a whole new game today. And I think that's going to be crucial. I think if they give up on themselves, we don't win this football game because if we can't use
No.
Le'Veon Moss, we can't do anything. Max Johnson, we saw him under pressure. He either turns the ball over or he gets sacked. There's no way. So I think that's going to be something to watch out for. I mean, as far as what you were saying about our defense, I mean, you're right. The long ball. I think as far as other than aside from Ole Miss and Mississippi State, I would argue that this might be where our secondaries get tested the most this season in SEC play. I think they are going to be a very vertical. They've been a very vertical offense, but I think they're going to absolutely go into the film room this week and exploit Josh DeBerry. I think they're going to be gunning for him hard. I think they saw the Alabama game and know exactly what to expect from our secondaries. And looking at Durkin, what he needs to do when they do that is say, I'm gonna put a safety behind DeBerry, or I'm gonna give DeBerry some help so he doesn't get burnt on these routes because those Tennessee receivers will burn him, and they can burn him. But that goes for all of our secondaries. I'm only talking about Josh DeBerry, obviously, because he had just such a rough game against Burton. But I think you're absolutely right on that. It's gonna be long balls that we need to watch out for, and Joe Milton absolutely has the arm. We just got to hope that he's not as consistent, like you're saying.
Yeah, that's why I picked him. I want to see how DeBerry bounces back, and our O line especially too, because like it's hard to, it's easy to forget that like we had 4 or 5 super seniors on the O line in 2020, and so like it was a really great O line, and ever since like they haven't been as good. But
Yeah,
like we have a really young O line. Like next year, at part of this year now, especially with 2 losses and outside chances of making the championship for SEC, is working on their progressions and getting better for next year because they'll be older. They'll have the experience, hopefully. So I think that's huge as well.
yeah. I think it's hard just being an A&M fan and hearing, next year, next
It
year,
is.
next year. I think everyone's tired of hearing it, and it sucks, but
It,
it's true though. I mean, it really is true. I mean, we do have a chance with guys maturing and stepping up, and all the recruits that we're getting now. I think we have the number 3 class in the nation. I mean, at some point, it's got to give. I mean, I think that's
yeah,
what everyone feels like, and all the recruiting coming in. And if it's not the recruiting that's doing it, like I said, we kind of talked about already, but then you start asking questions at coaching positions. But yeah, no. So I think I kind of want to move into that just a little SEC recap over what happened this weekend. It was a little bit of a hectic weekend. So obviously A&M had the chance to win the West and possibly go to the championship. And then people will argue and say that we had to beat up Ole Miss and Mississippi State. I don't think anyone's beaten us if we're coming off that game against Alabama and we win. I think that
no,
was our chance for the championship, and I think we threw it out the window. But there's obviously some hope, people could lose like another game because I mean it is, a one-loss SEC West all across the board, all for the most part. But I mean, I'm not going to get my hopes up about that. I think it's a lot
no.
less likely, even if we do win out. I just prefer to make a good bowl game this year, like a New Year's Six bowl. But so we were very wrong about our picks. I think we can say that.
Yeah,
I think the worst one that hurt the most was Kentucky, and not just because I was really, pulling for them to upset Georgia, but because they got absolutely just the doors blown off them, 51-3, I think was the score, or something like that.
yeah,
So that was really sad, but it looks like it's going to be Georgia. I mean, obviously, the Georgia's the only undefeated team in the SEC now. Missouri was also very disappointing. They had them. They just, Jaden Daniels became too good all of a sudden.
yeah.
But what were some things that you saw from this past week in the SEC that kind of caught your attention?
I know LSU defense has some holes for sure. That's been shown all year, but Cook really looked better than I thought he would. Like
Yeah,
I know I know they were undefeated, but like I didn't think he'd play that well. And they put up a lot of points. My pick was for Mizzou to win by 10. And honestly, they were winning until the end, and then they threw that pick six, so it made it look like a less close game than it was. But it was a really good game.
Yeah, it's starting to feel like the water's kind of settling in the SEC and everything's kind of going back to normal. Alabama's going, back to the top of the West, Georgia's staying at the top of the East. Um,
Yeah,
so I think kind of we're through the chaos of the season. Especially for A&M, we really just need to win out, which this weekend is going to be a really big test. I kind of have a bad feeling about going into Neyland personally. I don't know. I'm not going to pick against them, obviously, but going into
no,
Neyland, it's a hard stadium to play in. They have some weapons that can exploit our defense, but it'll be interesting. But do you want to go ahead and just move into the picks? I know we're kind of running a little bit probably over for time here or just about
yeah,
towards the end.
yeah. Let's
So
do it.
this weekend we got some interesting games coming up. Um, Nothing too crazy. I would say probably the main card, if you want to call it a main card, would be uh, most likely Missouri, Kentucky,
Yeah,
which is not that exciting anyways. It's definitely not Georgia Vanderbilt, but
no,
yeah, let's go ahead and start with Georgia Vanderbilt. Obviously, we're both going to pick Georgia, I would assume, right?
yes.
Okay, I
I
wasn't sure if you're on upset alert, and I was about to say I can't pick that with you, but how
you
about
can't really be on
I'm sorry.
you can't really be on upset alert with Vanderbilt playing. Like they just
No,
that doesn't happen.
I don't know
What's
if I
yours?
could tell you the last time Vanderbilt upset anyone. I don't
No,
know.
I couldn't either.
They're a baseball school, but that's also what I'm saying about us after last week. Um, so Alabama, Arkansas. I'm going to go personally with Alabama. I think they're not going to lose the rest of the season, at least SEC play.
I think Bama by 14.
Yeah, I'll take Bama by at least 14, 14 and a half pass back spread. Uh, Florida, South Carolina is actually probably going to be a little bit more interesting than people think. Do think Spencer Rattler comes up big in this game, though. I'm calling it now. I'm going to take South Carolina by 10.
Yeah, after at first I thought I knew Florida wasn't good, and especially the Graham Mertz, but they shocked the world and beat Tennessee earlier. So I kind of debated this, but I'm going to say South Carolina as well by 3. I
Yeah,
think Rattler has one game every year where he looks amazing, and so I think this might be one of them.
yeah, absolutely. Moving on to Auburn and LSU, I think Jaden Daniels is proving to be one of the best quarterbacks in the nation. The fact that he's not in the Heisman race is a little bit bizarre to me. I know
Yeah,
still has some inconsistencies, but I mean, I think he put up like a ridiculous amount of rushing yards this past game against Missouri. I mean, I'm not joking. I think it was like 100 plus 150 plus yards rushing as a quarterback, and I mean that's just insane. But I'm going to go ahead and take LSU. I think as bad as their defense is, they're too much for Auburn. I don't think Auburn knows who they are right now at all. I think they're kind of going through the motions as a team, especially on offense. I don't know if they even score a touchdown in this game. Actually, I won't say that because it is still LSU's defense. I'll say they win by 18.
I said LSU by 14 just because of the fact that LSU's defense has not been great, but Auburn's offense, as you could see when you went to the game when they played A&M, like they can't throw the ball, they can't run the
Yeah,
ball. So it, I could definitely see LSU winning by like 4 touchdowns.
yeah. You know what we should do is we should get a one of those things like the bear on ESPN where he has the spreads. We should do the pass
Yeah,
back spreads for next week and have all the spreads that we laid out and see how many hit. But
we should
okay,
next week.
so obviously the main card that we were talking about, Missouri, Kentucky, offensive shootout most likely. I imagine the over unders probably I haven't checked it, but probably set somewhere at 55 plus. Um, I think for some reason I'm like really high on this Missouri team, even though they lost last week. I think Luther Burden gets it done for Missouri this week, and I think Kentucky can't stop it. I'm going to go ahead and take Missouri. I guess technically on the upset, they're ranked. Kentucky's ranked 24, so I'll take Missouri this week.
That was I saw that when I was looking at my picks, and I was like, how did Kentucky lose by 40 to Georgia and is ranked, but
Yeah,
Mizzou? Anyways, I picked Missouri by 7. I think
yeah,
that they they may have lost, but they didn't waver in my confidence in them because of how they played until the end of the game last
yeah.
week.
I'll definitely take them as just a one score as well, just a touchdown. And finally, Texas A&M, Tennessee. You picking Tennessee?
You know we can't.
Just kidding. You know, we never would. But no, yeah. I
No.
mean, it's Texas A&M obviously for the both of us. But as much as I think it's going to be a hard game to win, I don't think it's impossible. And actually, I think we have a really, really good chance. I mean, we've talked about a lot of negatives on this podcast, and to make it a little bit more refreshing and kind of talk about just more positive things. I think our defense is still obviously one of the best in the nation. I haven't checked our NCAA rankings on defenses, but I would assume it went up after last week still. I would say we're probably, if I had to guess, number 3 in the nation now.
Yeah.
Um, so if we had, you said we had 6 sacks in this game against Alabama last week. So that puts us
Yeah.
at 20 over 3 games. I mean, that's just unbelievable. So if we
Yeah.
can get pressure on on Milton, I really do think that that's going to be our biggest chance at winning. I think our offense has to have a good day. I don't think they can get sloppy. Max has to get the ball out quicker. Big thing that actually one of my friends was telling me at the game was his decision making is what got us into a lot of problems. How fast he was able to make a decision, either to run, throw it. We saw it on that last drive where it was a safety. That was kind of the nail in the coffin for us. But you know,
Right.
take away that safety and take away mistakes like that. I think if Max has a clean game, I think that he could be we could win this honestly by 2 touchdowns. I think our defense will be fine against Tennessee as far as the run game. What we're really just gonna have to watch out for is just the passing. If Josh DeBerry has a good game and all of our secondaries have a good game, I don't see why we lose this.
How much do you think A&M wins by?
I mean, at Neyland, I would take them as +3,
Okay. I said
maybe
they
plus
win by
10, maybe.
I say that A&M wins by 4, but I still think they're the underdog in this game, especially after last week.
Yeah,
Um, they, I think the defense will have an easier time because Milton isn't like a very dual threat quarterback, so it takes away that defender that just had to sit there and stay. So I think that our downfield coverage will be slightly better.
yeah.
But I think A&M will bounce back, especially with the defense. They don't seem to be swayed by momentum. Like they just keep making plays. So I think they'll come back and win this game by 4.
All right. So I think that is all of our picks. Was there anything else you wanted to add this week? I don't think I have anything. I know we're going to try to start going to Midnight Yell and getting some clips for, people that aren't able to go and don't live in College Station. But I don't really have anything on my end, do you?
No, I think we covered it. We went pretty long, so I think we
Yeah,
talked
I
about
know, I know. I
a
feel like
lot
now,
of
you know what?
things.
What's funny is I feel like we didn't even talk about all of it. I feel like there's still so much more to talk
No,
about the last game. I think we had to kind of squeeze it in here. But
yeah,
all right. Well, that concludes this episode or this week's episode of the Pass Back podcast. We will be back next week. I think we're going to start releasing videos around Tuesday, Wednesday. But yeah, I guess we'll see y'all next week. I'm Jackson Moss,
I'm Cade Young.
and we'll see y'all
Thank
in the
y'all for
next one.
watching.